Okay, so with that, we will start our Dhammapada studies. And today we are going to study our, another verse, very important verse that is found in the first chapter in the Dhammapada. Again, a word of inspiration that, these verses were used by the early disciples of the Buddha, even during the time of the Buddha, to memorize and also to as reminders of their spiritual practice. We all need reminders in our spiritual path. So therefore, because we from time to time we need some assistance, some reminders to ourselves. So these verses in the Dhammapada can help us as reminders for us to, keep in track in our spiritual path. So that is why these verses are given. These messages are given in a verse form. So we can actually, when it is given in a verse form, you can recite it and you can memorize it. There's an when it is in a verse form, somehow we can grasp it, we can retain it in our mind more than a prose form. So unfortunately, when we translate these verses into English, we cannot really, make it a verse form. But at least if we can remember the essence of this meaning, essence of these verses, they can help us to keep in track in our spiritual path. So with that words, let me share the verse that we are going to study today. It is so it is verse number 8 in the chapter on pairs, which is the first chapter in the Dhammapada. So let me chant this verse first. So and then we will study the meaning afterwards. Asubhānupassiṃ viharantaṃ indriyesu susaṃvutaṃ Bhojanambhi mattaññuṃ saddhaṃ āraddhavīriyaṃ taṃ ve nappasahati māro vāto selaṃ'va pabbataṃ. Just as a storm cannot prevail against a rocky mountain, Mara can never overpower the person who lives contemplating on impurities, who is controlled in his senses, moderate in eating, and filled with faith and earnest effort. What this verse is saying actually, we can, in our life, in order to have an inner strength, and not to be always become a victim to Mara. We will understand what is the meaning of Mara very soon. So in order to withstand the force of the Mara, in order to not to become a victim to Mara all the time in our life, we need inner strength. And the way to develop inner strength is to develop these qualities, to practice these things given in this verse. If someone lives with contemplating on impurities, and someone is control senses or may have a sense restraint, or someone is moderate in eating, and someone is having in faith and earnest effort in her life, such a person can be like a rocky mountain. Rocky mountain that you will not be easily overcome by the forces of the Mara. So I think we all like to be like a rocky mountain, like a very solid rock, rocky mountain, a very solid mountain, a solid rock that is stable, that is grounded. We all, want to live life like that. Otherwise, our life will be like a very weak tree, or maybe even like a piece of paper or piece of cotton that will be flowing back and forth wherever the wind is blowing. We'll be simply going to all these different directions, and so we will get tired as a result. So therefore, we all need some kind of stability, some kind of inner strength, and we all like to be like a rocky mountain. But it's not that easy to be like live like a rocky mountain as a solid rock in our normal life. But in order to develop such a stability, such a balance, we need to develop these qualities given here. We will discuss each quality in detail. But before that, let's go to these important terms I would like you to be familiar with in this verse. So this starting of this verse, we have this term asubha. So the asubha is opposite of subha. So these are two important Pali terms. It is important for us to understand, meditation in Buddhism too. So subha literally means beauty or attractiveness. Sometimes we also use subha for auspicious, like. But the asubha, which is the opposite of that, is called foulness or unattractiveness. This verse encourages us to contemplate not on the attractiveness actually, but on the unattractiveness. Let's see why this verse is guiding us to do that. Why do you want to focus on unattractiveness? Why do you want to focus on foulness rather than beauty or attractiveness? We will come to that soon. But these are the two important terms: subha, beauty, attractiveness; asubha, foulness or unattractiveness. Then the third term is something already you are familiar with. That is called saddha. Saddha is usually translated as faith. There is also element of faith in this mental state. Faith is mainly trust, confidence, and conviction. It's mainly when we start a spiritual practice, we are going to experience something that we haven't experienced before. We are going to aim at transformation that we haven't achieved yet. So therefore, in order to start a journey aiming at a transformation that we have not been there, we need some kind of trust to start that practice. We need some kind of confidence or conviction to start our practice. Have some conviction, some confidence that this practice will work and will be able to, bring me to that goal. So the saddha is that kind of trust, that kind of confidence and conviction, and even that kind of faith that you develop towards the Buddha, towards the Buddha's teaching, and towards other teachers. That we develop some kind of trust and faith in them. That and then we start our practice. Without that faith, we will not fully commit ourselves into our practice. Based on the level of saddha, our commitment to practice will be different. If we have a little bit saddha, not really fully sure, not really have deep trust, maybe a little bit trust, a little bit faith, then we will commit to our practice a little bit. But the more trust we develop, the more confidence and conviction we develop towards the teachings of the Buddha, and then we will commit more to our practice. So saddha is that quality, can be called faith, but mainly trust, confidence, and conviction, saddha. Viriya, that goes along with saddha, Viriya is mainly effort, internal effort, mental effort that we are making inside. That when it's little bit going against a stream, but when we are drawn to do something, and if we can make an internal effort to not to follow the inner urge in our mind, but purposely redirect our attention and try to do wholesome thing, and that's what we call viriya. Internally, we are making that effort. You can also call it strength. Once you develop viriya again and again, you develop inner strength that you can withstand the defilements, and we can overcome defilements. So vigor is also another term to refer to that. So virya can be translated in all these forms, but it's mainly inner quality that we all have when we are practicing spiritual path. And let's go to the next one. Okay, next one is māra. Okay, māra is an important term that we find in the Buddhist sources quite often. Mainly, the term māra has this meaning of collective force of defilements. That will be the primary meaning of the term māra, collective force of defilements. We all have, unwholesome tendencies within us, through unskillful responses, unskillful behaviors we have done so far. We have developed certain negative patterns, and we have also negative urges in our mind, unwholesome urges. The term defilements can refer to all sorts of unwholesome tendencies in us, including like anger, greed, jealousy, conceit, pride, all kinds of unwholesome mental states. So collective force of defilements can be called the term māra. Sometimes the term māra is given like an individual. It's a kind of personification of all these defilements. So in Buddhist sources, we use the term māra to personify the collective force of all defilements. We know that at the last moment of the Buddha's enlightenment, we say that he defeated the māra. So actually, he defeated the collective force of defilements, and then he overcame all the defilements permanently. So whenever you see the term māra, that is the primary meaning, the collective force of defilements. But the broader meaning, māra can also mean anything or anyone who obstructs our spiritual practice, mainly who obstruct our path to nibbana, path to enlightenment. So when we examine the uses of the term māra in the Buddhist sources, that is a common theme we find, that anything that will obstruct your journey towards enlightenment it can be called māra. So anyone can become a māra. So even anything that will somehow keep us from realizing the truth, anything that keep us from realizing the deep peace within us, that can be a māra. So sometimes can be a thing. I'm sure that some cases, if you don't use our devices wisely, any of our devices can be a māra. Maybe your smartphone can become a māra that will prevent you from growing your spirituality. So anything or anyone who will obstruct our spiritual development can be called māra. So therefore, in the Buddhist sources, we find 5 types of māra. I think if you want, we can discuss them later. 5 types of māra. because all these, five types are actually obstructing our, practice to enlightenment. But its primary meaning is collective force of defilements. Okay, these are the Pali terms. Now let's go to the real meaning. Okay. Actually, this verse has another verse where Buddha described, actually, if someone does not develop the qualities that we are going to discuss later, and his life going to be like how the weak tree is being swayed to right or left or back and forth with the power of the wind, and our mind will be driven to all kind of directions by the force of defilements. So usually, our defilements control us. When we think about our decision, and when we make decisions, our speech, our actions, all these things are driven by our defilements. In most cases, we even are not aware of them. Why did I make a decision to lie? Why did I make a decision to steal? Why did I make a decision to, ignore a person? Sometimes we make those decisions very quickly, right? To ignore person, or to blame person, or to scold person. We don't have any clue about it, but we simply do it. We make decisions, we speak, we do things. Most of the time, without our knowing, those decisions and actions are driven by our defilements, influenced by our defilements. So therefore, many ordinary people, including ourselves in most cases, are victims of our own defilements. So this is the, this is the what you call predicament of human beings. If we don't have if we haven't developed enough spiritual strength, wisdom, mindfulness, we are always the victims of our own defilements. So we simply follow the demands of our defilements, and then eventually, of course, we get tired afterwards too. Like, if our mind urges, okay, do that, and we go and do this. Sometimes we simply follow the demands of our defilements to do that or do this, and look for pleasures, and go distant places to enjoy some kind of pleasure, and pleasure will be very little, but the whole effort to achieve that pleasure will be so tiresome. But when our defilements demands it, we have no choice. If we haven't developed mindfulness, we simply follow that, defilements. And we sometimes take a lot of burden to get a little bit of pleasure, a lot of burden to get a little bit of maybe entertainment. And so that is how we live our life most of the time. And of course, we get tired afterward, and then we try to do something else to get rid of that tiredness. And again, try to indulge in something else to get rid of that tiredness. But it's not really, getting us to anywhere. So that's what is happening. And but importantly, we also have a capacity within ourselves to overcome the power of these defilements. So we are capable of being driven by wholesome qualities too, what we call kusala. We are not always carried away by the defilements. Sometimes we can also generate our feeling of our motive, our wholesome qualities of generosity, and our wholesome qualities of compassion, loving kindness. And so in our life, when we think about different incidents happen in a day, we can even divide those incidents into two. Some decisions, some actions we have done based on the forces of influence of defilements. We are not aware of it. But some actions, some decisions we have made with the influence of wholesome qualities. And so therefore we also speak kindly to others. We also go out and help others. We become generous with our time and our energy, and we help and support others also. And sometimes we can go beyond our ordinary defilements and do the opposite to that. So therefore, we have that capacity. That's the capacity that we want to enhance. And this verse is helping us to enhance that capacity to overcome our own defilements, giving us specific practices to do that. These are those, those techniques given in this verse. What are the techniques not to be controlled by Mara or defilements? What are the techniques not to be the victims of the Mara in our life? So these are the 5 techniques given in this verse. In this verse, we find these 5 techniques. First one is called contemplating on fallenness or unattractiveness of beautiful things. This is an interesting practice. I would like to hear from you what you think about this. Contemplating on fallenness or unattractiveness of beautiful things. Why do we need to do that? Okay, that's first one. Next one is self-restraint or guarding senses. Guarding our five senses, guarding or maybe developing some kind of restraint in our senses. We will discuss them in detail. And the third one is called moderation in eating. So interesting, even our eating is also part of this practice. Moderation in eating. And having the fourth one, having trust or confidence in the teachings of the Buddha, what you call saddhaṃ. And the fifth one, last one, is called earnest effort or virya. In this case, āraddhavīriyaṃ. That is in a continuous effort, earnest effort, more enthusiastic effort. So the saddha and effort, confidence and effort go together. So these are the 5 practices that are given in this verse as a way to help us to be strong, help us to not to be victims of our defilements, and to be like a rocky mountain. These are the 5 techniques. Okay, before we start our discussion on these 5 techniques, I would like to hear from you. What do you think about the first technique? Can someone help us? Can someone give your opinion, your thoughts? Why we should contemplate fallenness or unattractiveness of beautiful things? Can someone share their thoughts? Why do you think this verse is asking us to do that? Anyone? Raise your hands if you'd like to share your thoughts on this. Okay. No idea? Okay, so let's discuss that. Let me go to the next slide. Okay. This is the point. Contemplating on fallenness or unattractiveness, beautiful thing. Okay, we got one hand raised, right? Yes, brother Lobi Leng. What do you like to share with us? Why do you have to do that?
Bante.
Oh, okay, yes.
Bante. So we have to contemplate on the Asubha because they have very strong sensual desire. To overcome the strong sensual desire, especially sexual.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Sister Beeling. Thank you. Yes, definitely. This is about like overcoming our lust or our greed. So this is given as a technique to overcome our lust or our greed, our craving for any beautiful thing. So this is the point, so we develop lust or craving for anything when we focus on the pleasant or beautiful part of it. So whenever you feel kind of, attractiveness to something, craving for something or lust for something, whenever you develop that, there is an interesting thing happened there. We only focus on one aspect of that object or of that person or of that experience. We focus only one aspect. We kind of ignore the other aspect. Everything that we ignore the other side of it. So any object, any phenomena that in this world has two aspects to it. I think it's always there's a pleasant part towards it. There's also unpleasant part towards it. But whenever we develop craving or lust towards anything, we somehow ignore the whole section, whole aspect of that experience, of that phenomenon, of that object. We only focus on only one aspect. So that is why we keep on craving for it. We keep on having lust towards it. So the technique of purposely directing our attention to the side that we haven't seen. So that's the point. This is more like a corrective method to purposely focus on unattractiveness or maybe foulness of it. When we purposely contemplate on the unattractiveness, we get the complete picture. You may develop some craving towards certain kind of food. Maybe develop craving towards certain kind of cloth, or maybe feeling lustful about maybe an individual. And whenever you develop that, remember that you have a very biased picture of that object. Very biased picture. So then we had to make it balance. So what we had to do, we had to purposely contemplate the other side of it, that side that we haven't seen. So for that we need some kind of knowledge also, but and we can ask the question, okay, why I'm so attracted to this? What else this object has? I can see the beauty, the pleasantness, all these beautiful features here, but is that all is it having? What else does it have? So we can expand our perspective and then particularly focus on the unattractiveness. And of course, in the Buddhist practice, particularly as a way to overcome our lust for particularly sensual or sensual lust or sexual lust, we are advised to purposely contemplate on the true nature of the body, because we can be very attracted to human bodies, because we whenever we feel attractive, maybe lustful about human bodies, we only focus on the superficial aspect of that body. So by focusing, contemplating purposely the true nature of the body, all the other aspect of the body and everything inside the body, we get a complete picture. So we get rid of the wrong image that we have constructed on human bodies. The same thing can be done to any other object too. So when we only focus on the pleasant part of object, we simply develop craving and desire for it. And then we kind of ignore the other part. But when we purposely contemplate on the fallenness or unattractiveness or the other side that we haven't seen before, then we get the complete picture. Once you get the complete picture, the whole purpose of contemplating unattractiveness of the things is not to develop, disinterest on this, not to develop, disgust on those objects. Actually, it's going to be again a wrong thing on the opposite side. The goal of contemplating the other side of this object is to develop equanimity at the end, because we haven't seen, you have seen the beautiful part, but you preoccupied with only that part, but now you purposely contemplate the other part, and then you get the whole picture. Once you get the whole picture of any attractive thing together with this unattractiveness, we develop neither craving nor disgust. We simply develop equanimity. So in that case, our defilements cannot control us. we will not be driven to, to do wrong things, immoral things as a result. So that is, that is the first technique given in this verse. So once you get the whole picture, we don't find any reason to have lust, craving for it, or even we will not find any reason to have, disgust or anger towards it. But mainly it helps us to overcome lust or craving, which is a very, key, defilements in us. Okay, so that is the first technique. That is the as a way to help us to stay strong. Okay, let's move to the other part. This is called guarding sense or sense restraint or guarding sense doors. So the defilements that that will arise in our mind usually arise as a result of a trigger. There's always a trigger point. There's always a trigger that gives rise to defilements. Our trigger most of the time of our defilements is some kind of sensory experience. We will see something, we will hear something, smell something, taste something, maybe we feel something, or we will remember something that something we have seen before. So that is where the whole process of defilements will start. So here, this technique is actually, try to focus in the very beginning of this whole, process. So focus on the triggers that will give us defilements, that will, once the defilements arise in us, it can stay very long, can, push us to do so many things. So, but we can also pay attention to the very beginning of these, defilements. So our sensory experience, what we see, hear, smell, taste, can lead us to have rumination and mainly also to have fantasies. So the defilements, get their food in our fantasizations. All our defilements become really strong, when we fantasize, when we ruminate. But our sensory experience, initial sensory experience are the one that will lead us to have rumination and fantasization. So what this technique is actually to maintain mindfulness, very strong self-awareness of when we are having a sensory experience. And we simply notice what we see, smell, taste, hear, and try not to develop whole story afterwards. And simply, notice those, initial sensory objects. And try not to go into another memory based on that. When our mind is trying to go there, we notice it and remind ourselves, it is only visual object. That's all, nothing else here. So we try to not let our mind to create stories and ruminations. So this is how it is explained, in these courses. Here, it is in the Sariputta Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. How does a monk guard the doors of his senses? On seeing a form with the eye, he does not grasp or not seize hold of either its general appearance or its details, by which, if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of eye, the evil, unskillful qualities such as greed or distress might assail him. So this is what is happening into us. So the technique is, whenever we see anything or hear, smell anything, we don't grasp, we don't seize hold of its general appearance or its details. Because whenever we see, hear, smell, taste, whenever we encounter anything, we will focus on either general appearance of that object, or maybe we focus on details of, like other secondary details of that object. And what happens, even after we have seen it, then we are not seeing it anymore, but we can recreate that object in our mind with this through its general features or maybe details. And then it can become a starting point of more ruminations and more fantasization. That's usually what is happening in our life. That is how defilements keep building up. So this technique is very is very skillful, and is to, like, whenever, and if you can recognize that there can be certain, sensory objects, certain things that when you see, you get really angry. When you hear those sounds, sometimes some people voices can make us so angry. So you can recognize, those certain sounds, certain, smells, certain taste, certain tactile sensations, or certain, visual forms that will give rise to your defilements, that will make you angry, that will make you sad, that usually they make you, wanting more. So you can recognize those in those visual forms or sounds or whatever, and then try to practice this. Whenever you hear that voice, remember yourself, I'm just hearing this voice. I'm just hearing a voice, nothing else. And don't try to grasp, don't try to seize hold of that, the general appearance or the details of it. And then even after that sound is gone, and you will develop thoughts about it. So don't get caught up in the features or the details of the sensory object. Simply remind yourself, oh, I'm just seeing. I'm just hearing. This is simply an ordinary experience. This is something happening as a result of this, causes and conditions. So simply notice that this is only a vision, this is only a hearing, this is only a taste, nothing else. All the other value that I am building onto it, and just try to be with the experience. Don't try to bring that, memory of that experience the latter part, and don't make it a point of further rumination. So we call it, one nips the cognitive process in the bud, nips in the bud. One nips the cognitive process in the bud before it can evolve into stages that stimulate defilements. This requires some training, definitely, because we are so used to, take a picture and grasp it and then think about it. It's like, our mind operates like a camera. We always take snapshots, and then even though whatever we saw, hear, smell is gone, but we can still, relive that experience. We can indulge in that experience again and then make it fantasize. We can fantasize about it. We can ruminate about it. So that whole rumination, fantasization is possible only when we take that snapshot, like that, like grasping that, initial sensory experience, and then recreate it later with our memory. So this practice is not to take hold, like seize seize hold of this, but simply go through the experience, be with the experience, try not to hold into one, focus on one particular thing and think about it later. Sometimes if you go to a ceremony, if you go to a meeting, if you go to a family gathering, there can be so many things happening in that whole gathering, but you will seize hold of one conversation and come back home and keep thinking about that. Why that person told that to me? Or, and there are so many things happening, but you will seize hold of one object, one incident, one person, and you come back and think about, as if only that person was there in that meeting. And we kind of ignore all other things happen in that whole meeting or your whole gathering. So that's what we usually do. But this practice is to try to go through the experience without really selecting, without too much focusing on one thing, not really, taking a snapshot of details of the appearance of that thing and come back and keep thinking about it, but simply go through the experience without, without, seizing hold of any one thing over there. So this is what we call guarding the senses. And this will definitely help us to be free from, a lot of defilements. Okay, the next one is called moderation in eating. Moderation in eating. And so interestingly, this term, if you see in the Pali verse, is called ahare mattaññuṃ, Asubhānupassiṃ viharantaṃ indriyesu susaṃvutaṃ, Bhojanambhi mattaññuṃ. the literal meaning of this term, Bhojana mattaññuṃ, is like knowing the correct measure of food. This, like knowing the correct measure of food, means that knowing how much to eat. That means actually so this practice of actually knowing the correct measure of food, like how much your body really needs. Knowing that is also seen as a way to overcome our defilements. This whenever we want to eat, have you ever measured your level of hunger? Have you ever measured the level of your hunger? Because our hunger can be at different levels at different times, right? If you haven't eaten 2 meals, of course your hunger will be very high. If you have eaten a lot, you had a few snacks through the day, your hunger will be not that high. So there are different levels of our hunger. So I think important practice would be that before you eat, you take a moment to measure your hunger. How hungry I am right now. Am I hungry for a full plate? Or am I hungry for half plate? Or am I hungry for a quarter plate? And then if you can measure, if you can measure your hunger before you eat, then you can actually prepare your meal depending on the level of your hunger. But most of the time we don't do that. Whenever we feel hungry, we simply go and take the food, and whatever food there we simply eat. We don't do that. But preparation is actually like doing that, like knowing the correct measure of food. But it's not only knowing the correct measure of the food, it's also knowing or remembering the primary purpose of eating. So when we and as monks, before we eat our meal, we do a chanting, a reflection, and even in your retreats, before you eat, you make a reflection to remind you the purpose of eating, and also correct purpose of eating. So of course, moderation of eating is explained in the suttas as a way of remembering the correct measure of food, and also the correct remembering the primary purpose of eating. That is to sustain this body to live a wholesome life, to practice the Dhamma. The body, the food is something that like a fuel we need to run this body. The whole purpose of food is to sustain this body, to help this body to survive, so we can help others. We can be compassionate, and we can do our duties. We can fulfill our obligations, and we can practice the Dhamma. We can develop our wisdom. So in order to develop all these things, we need to have a healthy body. We need to have a functioning body. So food is simply a fuel to help us to sustain body. That's the whole purpose of eating. So remembering that, it can help us decide what kind of food that I should eat. If the true purpose of eating is sustaining the body, are all the food that we are eating, are they really helping us, helping this body? Because we may eat, some junk food, which may not be very helpful. I know that this practice will be very, very hard, particularly for Malaysians, because I'm not for Malaysia, but everyone. I'm just, but because I know that a lot of Malaysians are very fond of food. They really like to try different food, and it's like a food culture is very strong in Malaysia. But of course, I'm not. That's okay. You can experiment. You can enjoy different kinds of food, but remembering, what is the primary purpose of eating is important. Even when we try different food, you can try different kind of food. Of course, we focus more on the taste when we eat food, but at the same time, we should also mainly give more prominence to the not to the taste, of not only the taste of the food, but actually whether that food is helping my body. Is this food nourishing my body, or is this body making my body toxic? So you can eat nourishments, you can also eat toxins. What do you want to eat? Right? So what we are eating, are they really nourishments or are they toxins? So you can think about it. So moderation is eating is actually reminding ourselves that food is a medicine. Food is a medicine, food is a fuel. And when we contemplate the real purpose of food, we can overcome gluttony. We can overcome gluttony and greediness towards food. That will lead to a lot of other defilements too. So moderation is knowing the correct measure, knowing the true purpose of eating. So I would like to show you two important verses from other sources in Dhammapada, and this one is from Dhammapada Sutta. This is what Buddha taught to King Pasenadi, who had the problem of overeating. So the King Pasenadi has an eating disorder. He overeat, and so Buddha helped him to overcome his bad habit. But in helping him, he gave this verse. When a person is constantly mindful and knows when enough food has been taken, all their afflictions become more slender and they age more gradually, protecting their vitality. This is an important thing to remember. Buddha said that when you know the correct measure of food we should need to our body, whenever we eat, we are very, very mindful of the correct measure of the food. And that awareness, that moderation of eating can help us to age gradually, not to age suddenly, like we will age slowly. Actually, more gradual means we will age slowly. So I think, so in that way, like taking the food mindfully and also taking the food in moderately can help us to age slowly. But this in here, the Buddha said that how it can be related to our enlightenment flow. When physical food is comprehended, passion for 5 strings of sensuality is comprehended. So when passion for 5 strings of sensuality is comprehended, there's no fetter bond by which a disciple of noble ones would come back again to this world. So in the Putta Mansa Sutta, again in Sanghutta Nikaya, we find discussion on 4 types of food. In the 4 types of food, the food is not only edible food, but there's also food to mind. But here, it says that when we truly comprehend the true nature of the edible food, and what's the real purpose of this food, and how this food is simply helping us sustain body, when you have deep contemplation, the true understanding of the food can help us to overcome our desire for other sensual objects or other sensual pleasures too. So Buddha has seen as it's very central for us to understand the true purpose of food that can help us to overcome many other defilements too. That is the main message of this sutta. Okay, now we can come to the other one, the last 2, which is saddha and virya. Of course, we discussed enough about saddha, trust or confidence that, so saddha means the development of this faith and trust in the Buddha and his teachings and also the disciples of the Buddha. Once we have that trust, we can also develop trust and confidence that defilements can be overcome. So we develop inner trust, inner confidence that although these defilements can be very strong, but they can eventually overcome because other people have done it. Buddha has done it, and Buddha has even given techniques. And these techniques are working, and other people have done it for us. So when you know that, when you realize it, you develop inner confidence that the defilements can be overcome, and then the virya, the we call āraddhavīriyaṃ in this verse, put in consistent effort, putting consistent effort to detect and withstand and dispels these defilements. So I think the effort is very important in this practice. It's not only a trust, but also can we unmute, please? Some mic is on. It's disturbing. Thank you. Okay, so the virya, virya part is very important. This effort to detect our defilements, to withstand them, and also dispel them. And so, of course, all the other techniques that we discuss are the techniques to do it. But whenever we encounter defilements within us with mindfulness, we will detect it. But we need kind of inner strength to overcome them, knowing it and seeing it, and then not to be victim of it. And we need some kind of inner strength. All the techniques that we discuss will help us to have that strength. Okay, this particular verse is given by the Buddha. Are based on this story of two brothers, Mahakala and Chulakala. It's an interesting story. Actually, the Mahakala and Chulakala, these two brothers, they were they had a nice they were actually businessmen. They were traders. They had a family business. Chulakala and Mahakala, maybe, Kala and brothers, that kind of business. So they were two businessmen, brothers, and they were doing this business together. But they, both of them, came to see the Buddha, and on that day, Buddha gave them a very, very important, profound teachings. Mahakala, the elder brother, got really, really interested in the following the teachings of the Buddha. He realized that actually sensual things are not really giving me satisfaction that I'm looking for. No matter how rich I'm going to be, I will still be dissatisfied. So I really want to practice this Dhamma. So the elder brother, Mahakala, decided to become a monk. The younger brother, who's always following the elder brother, thought that, oh, if my brother become a monk, it should be very, valuable thing. Maybe so Mahakala, his elder brother, was really committed, but the Chulakala thought that maybe I should follow my brother. So he also became a monk. So elder brother became a monk with some conviction and with some commitment. Younger brother became a monk because elder brother became a monk, just following him. And both were practicing. The Mahakala elder brother was really consistent in his practice, and he was practicing all these qualities that we discussed, contemplating on the unattractiveness, on the pleasant, beautiful things, and guarding his senses, and practicing moderation of eating, and developing saddha, and putting constant effort to overcome defilements. He was doing all these 5 practices, and he was able to develop enough strength. But the younger brother, Chulakala, did not do really well. He practiced a little bit, but not consistent. But therefore, his defilements were still strong. So one day, they both of them, visited in their hometown together with the Buddha, and so their families invited them, invited all the monks to have, a meal, have dana in their homes. So these 2 brothers were able to go back to their, their previous houses, and also meet their previous, wives and other, family members. So in that process, what happened? When the Chula
il y a ton travail d'arrivée, il y a ton travail qui fait la préparation. Je pense que dans la juste, se passe qu'il fait une différence.
Sorry, I think we are back again, right? Sorry, yeah. So the younger brother disrobed and we returned to the daily life. And the next day, the dana ceremony was in the house of the older brother, the Mahakala. So all the monks thought that, after this dana ceremony, the elder brother will disrobe. So they all thought like that. So, but the second day, the dana ceremony was conducted in the elder brother's house. But of course, he has already developed enough inner strength by then. So dana ceremony was over, and actually the Mahakala himself gave an important sermon to his own family members, encouraging all of them to practice the Dhamma. But he returned to the monastery as a monk. So when monks, in the evening, the monks had the discussion about these two brothers and how both of them had two different, ways of behavior. But they explained that actually it's not easy for us to control our defilements. It's not easy to win our defilements. Our defilements can be very strong. Therefore, anyone who's practicing these 5 techniques that we just described will be able to win their defilements. And those who do not have those 5 techniques will definitely become victims to their defilements. So that's the lesson that Buddha gave. Okay, so when you continue to practice, these techniques, we can be like a rocky mountain. And I was really looking to show you a rocky mountain, and I found this. Is anyone familiar with this rocky mountain? Do you know what is this? Can anyone tell me?
Sigiriya.
Sigiriya, the rock fortress in Sri Lanka. This is a solid piece of big rock, and a king in the 5th century has built his palace over here, and so it's called Sigiriya, Sigiriya, the lion's rock. It has a shape of a lion. So we can be like a Sigiriya, we can be like a rocky mountain if we practice these 5 techniques. Okay, do we remember the 5 techniques now? At least, can you write 3? I'm going to do a test. Can you write at least 3 in the chat? If you write 5, I will be very impressed. I will, maybe at the end, I will share the. Yes, I'm seeing, so many of you writing these, techniques. I'm so glad. Okay, thank you. I think I'm so happy that many of you remember. Basically, it's like contemplating on the unattractiveness of any attractive thing that we experience to get the balanced picture and to develop equanimity. That's the first one. And second one is guarding our senses and simply experiencing anything, but don't take pictures, don't take hold seeds. So guarding our sense doors. And then moderation in eating, reminding ourselves what is the true meaning of true purpose of eating. And then developing saddha, having trust and faith in the teachings of the Buddha, and the possibility of overcoming defilements. And the fifth one is virya, our constant effort, constant and enthusiastic effort. Is more like an interesting battle between your old defilements and your new spiritual journey. There's always your old habits will try to drag you, but you can use your effort to to overcome them. So internal effort. So we say that to making an effort to internal effort, or effort to overcome whatever arisen defilements, and also try to make an effort not to let the unarisen defilements to arise. And also we can also make an effort to maintain the already arisen wholesome qualities, and we can also make effort to develop unarisen wholesome states too. So anyway, so when it comes to unwholesome mental qualities, we try to see them, notice them, and not to feed them and simply drop in them. And when we encounter wholesome qualities, we feed them, we maintain them, and sometimes we even purposely generate them. So that is virya. So those are the 5 techniques, like 5 fingers, like asubha, right? And then guarding senses, and moderation of eating, saddha, and virya. Those are the 5 techniques. Will be very strong, and no defilements will be able to overcome us and motivate us to do bad karma if we have these techniques. So we had to be very, very thankful and grateful to our Supreme Buddha for giving us such wonderful teachings. This is really helping us to overcome our own agitation, our own our own failures, our own helping us to be strong. And these techniques are really working. So let us be very, very grateful to these wonderful teachings, to our Supreme Buddha and all the other disciples of the Buddha who actually preserve these teachings for generations. And we are so lucky to have them all today.